I think you just had your new conference about how to deal with rankings and looking at all of them, right? Because there's a lot of them, right?
100%.
No one looks at Washington Monthly, right? You know, there's so many.
I mean, Princeton Review has their own guide or their own rankings. I mean, if you just Google college rankings, you come up with so many different organizations and publications that are...
And so many for-profits.
Exactly.
Yes.
Everyone's trying to make money off of this because they know people will look at those.
Yeah.
And I think when you kind of go behind the surface and take a look at what you're actually being sold or told when you're looking at rankings, it can demystify them and make you go like, oh, wow, I don't trust these at all. But you have to give the time to investigate it, to really be critical about what you're looking at, as opposed to just being spoon-fed something that someone else is saying, like, yeah, this school is better than that other school.
Oh, no. And I think always, like, even though, you know, your experience as a student, let's say we went to the same college, would be different than mine. Sometimes if I connect alumni and just that, you know, they could talk about the experience and stuff like that, it just kind of helped because it goes beyond the rankings. It goes beyond 100%. Like the classroom. Like, is someone going to say hi to me if I walk by them on campus, whether we know each other or not, or will they just be on their, you know, their AirPods and that's it, right? Now let's talk about that other system, UCCSUs.
Yeah.
Okay. In California, even if you're an in-state student, so many articles, tons of applications. And I always tell students, who doesn't want in the world to attend sunny California, right?
Yeah.
You know, and also in so many ranks internationally, right? For the UCs, and then it's gotten so competitive. And now that it's test free, along with the Cal States, what are some strategies that you're thinking about giving your students an edge for that? Because I think it's kind of hard for kids like, wait, my family pays taxes. How come I can't get into one of the UCs? But they always forget Riverside, Merced.
Absolutely. And that's strategy number one. Remember all the UCs.
Yes.
And that Riverside, for whatever reason, you know, some families don't see it as the highest caliber UC, even though it's still a University of California school. It has resources. It has a medical school.
Yes.
Like, they have fantastic resources. Sure, it's not UCLA with like the big Division I, you know, football program or sports program, but it's a fantastic institution.
And don't forget about the National Pulitzer Prize winners in their STEM program.
Yeah. And then Merced has, you know, great outcomes for students when they go there, especially for first generation, low socioeconomic status students. They thrive at Merced. They do incredibly well.
Most of my students have gone to UCSF Medical School is from UC Merced.
See, like, people forget that, and they ignore that those are good options too, just because they're not the most impossible schools to get into.
That's right.
And I think that's something that it's something that I've been fascinated about, like the consumer psychology that goes into play with that. If a school is not as selective, it's seen as lesser than.
That's right.
And I try to fight that misconception all the time and say it over and over and over, that just because there's more supply than demand, or more demand than supply of seats, you know, that it doesn't mean that a school is of better quality than the other. It just means it's more popular for all kinds of reasons, right? Yeah. And so for the UCs, I really want my students to think through, what does an academic experience at a UC look like? And depending on what they're looking for, have them ideally focus in on applying to the schools that match that experience and have the resources that they want, even if it's not the most desired UC campus, because they're focusing on their educational experience. And same thing with the Cal States. I know I've talked with several colleagues about, you know, what could the next 2 years be like for the Cal State system, now being test free. If there's going to be some campuses are going to see a severe spike in applications in the same way that some UC campuses saw that same spike when they went test free the first year. We have a couple of ideas of what schools might see that spike. I don't want to speak it into existence by even saying it, but that's going to be the one thing I'm going to be paying attention to. And my hope is that the leaders of those campuses are realizing that could happen, and that they find some way to fine-tune their admission process.
That means change the application, folks.
Exactly. To consider what they're asking of students and how they can do a better job of identifying those students.
No, like, I mean, like Poly San Luis Obispo is the only one before all this started calculating starting 9th grade year, even though the entire system starts 10th grade year, right? And then you see each campus, right, like San Diego State says, we're really going to heavily look on those activities. Or some other campuses, are you part of a CBO program? I think they're too afraid about bringing up a statement or an essay or a recommendation. And I understand too, because they're not getting funding, right? But I think, for colleges, I think a lot of them are looking at, because they're worried about, are our kids going to graduate closer to 4 years? So how many of the A to G courses, did you take some AP exams, right? They'll still look at AP scores before their senior year. And one thing is that I think is so fascinating that families will look at is concurrent enrollment, right? Because that, without a test score, whether it's a public school in California or not, it's a great thing, right? Even if you're doing it online at UCLA, that means you get a college transcript, but you're doing these courses with other college students, or, let's just say Kenyatta College or Mission College, right? One of the 116 community colleges about that. But I think one thing that gets lost outside of the classroom, because I see a lot of kids hearing this message of quantity versus quality.
Exactly.
What are your thoughts about that? Because the colleges have never asked for a laundry list, and that got lost along the way.
Yeah, I think one of my least favorite things to hear from students is when they say, I'm doing this because I think a college might like this. I'm doing this because I think it'll be impressive on my resume for college. And having been on the college side, like, I've seen all kinds of resumes. I've seen all kinds of experiences. I have lots of friends who work in college admissions still, and they tell me, like, yeah, it's not impressive. not that they're not doing incredible things, but there's so many kids who are so impressive in their own way that there's not a single way, one uniform path that's going to be designed to impress a college. So I always push back when a student says that, because I want them to understand, like, what is their motivation. If they're not doing it for themselves, for their own intellectual curiosity, for their own interests, for their own edification, then they're wasting their time. There's no reason to do that, because when you read an application, you can tell if it's something that a student's just checking a box, or if there's an opportunity that showcases that students pursuing their passion, because there's trends, for a student who's really interested in something in computer science and they've had this long-term interest. They've taken time to find resources online, to take classes, to try stuff out and build that knowledge base.
You're talking about one of my students, and he is so passionate about it, and he has $0.
Exactly.
And he'll find whatever he can to design it, even though he doesn't have the class or the math courses. Like, that's someone's going to go somewhere.
Exactly. And like that kind of motivation that a student displays speaks volumes. It shows so much potential that student already has, because if they don't have access to resources and they're still able to pursue their interest to that degree of time spent doing something or learning about something, imagine what they'll do when they have time, opportunity, resources, connections placed before them, readily available. They're just going to thrive even more. But then on the flip side, of course, is the student that has no clue what they want to study, right?
Yeah.
Which is so many students.
There's so many.
And that's perfectly fine too.
And it's also perfectly great too, because that means the whole world is open to you.
Exactly. And I think in those cases, I feel like those are the students that always feel the most lost.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a thing that they've been doing since they were in middle school and kind of building and growing that interest.
You sound like you're talking about all my children right now. I have 4 of them.
Yeah. And my biggest tip for them is just to pursue everything, Pursue every curiosity. Show how you've pursued those interests.
While balancing your life.
Absolutely.
9 hours of sleep for teenagers.
Absolutely. Because the thing is, I think what I really kind of took away from the pandemic and how students got to talk about how they explored their interests is that it could have been reading a book. It could have been spending time on a website. It could have been talking with people. It could have been watching documentaries on Netflix. It could have been watching YouTube videos, creating content. Like, there's so many different ways to engage with an interest that you have, even if it's only temporary. Yeah. If you try it out and realize, oof, this wasn't for me, at least you're showing that you're exploring something.
Yeah.
Right? That showcasing of just exploration speaks volumes, the same way that a student showing depth of interest by building upon experiences does, in my opinion.
No, I think a lot of people think like, oh, I'll do program X. That's going to get me in. I'm like, no. But if you learn guitar on your own and you decided, hey, I'm going to help this middle school near my school, just like, or even as the neighbor, or putting yourself out there,
doing something.
Yeah, and then and the kids like, oh, it's hard when you don't know, but. You want to, because we just started off like it's quality, quantity, but I think the thing is quality is like, I think a lot of times is kids like, well, I tried something, but I failed, or I tried something, I don't like it. But how were you dignified in that? Like, did you really listen to the person? Like, there's this one kid that I know who really tries a lot of different things, is not the best, is not the worst, but in every situation I observed, and they'll talk to the crossing guard. How's your day going on? Hearing everything, listening to the teacher and the instructors about learning about things. And how's your day today? No, really, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So, that's something where I'm experimenting with all these things. And that's why I think it's important as our roles as counselors, as teachers, and parents or guardians to step out and like, do you notice you do these little things? You're always communicating with other people. Maybe it's not well defined in what industry.
Yes.
But I mean, we have to kind of help them and help them see like, oh, there's that quality.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. That's actually that's one of my favorite types of conversations to have with students, where they're expressing this frustration at like, I don't know what I'm doing. I feel so lost. I feel so this.
Yeah.
But then there's that like aha moment that either myself or a teacher, someone in their life that they've kind of are processing this with goes, but did you realize that when you did this and this and this, there's this one kind of overarching quality, and it's like something that has just been so commonplace to them that they don't recognize it as distinct or special. But it takes someone from the outside perspective to share with them like, no, that's exceptional. That's distinct. Yeah. That's you. Talk about that. Lean into that. And that's where that self-discovery really comes to take place. I always tell my students that the college counseling process can actually be fun.
Yes.
The college search process should be enjoyable. And that one of the fringe benefits is that you learn about yourself. Yes, you end up in college and you have a great education, but putting in the work and effort to reflect, to think about your likes, your interests, to process this with a trusted person, really, whether it's a counselor, a teacher, a parent, a sibling, a friend, they help you see yourself in just how you process all this. Right. And that growth, that potential for growth that happens during those conversations and during this year of self-reflection, it's powerful. It's magnificent, because it sets you up for even better success going to college. Not that you have yourself fully defined, but a couple of things that are more true about yourself that maybe you didn't identify before as a high schooler.
No, and it goes back to one of my dad has a client who said, on your deathbed, what do you wish for? Whatever that is, that's what you strive to do every day. And so I tell my students, so if you don't even get into your college A or B or C, but you do this activity, or you took those elective courses, or that concurrent enrollment, you're like, I'm so glad. I still took that because I did it for me. And then you don't lose. And in a country where there's over 60% acceptance rate, there's a lot of choices. There's a lot of amazing choices, but the thing you have to choose is you.
Yes.
Not a rank, not a name.
That's couldn't said it better myself. That was perfect.
Well, in those words, because there's no such thing as perfect. And that's the thing is, right, we're going to go into a non-perfect world where one of my great colleagues always says we have to pivot. I say, let's just dance with it, right? Let's make those pivots into a dance move.
After so many pivots, you're basically dancing.
You're basically dancing.
So just have fun with it.
Let's just have fun. Well, Mr. Mata, I always have fun. It's so enjoyable. Thank you so much, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and our community.
My pleasure. It was a great time.
All right, everyone, until next time. Thank you for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your precious day to listen to us. So subscribe so that you could download this podcast wherever you may be. We're on so many different streaming devices, but also you can find out more information about College for All at www.college4all.com. We're also on Twitter at collegeforall.amv, Instagram collegeforall.amv, and more to come. Thank you and have an amazing day.